Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Raise Up Dev Takeover Help Desk. My name is Joe, and I am not your host for this show. I am just briefly with you to run through the house administrivia before I will give it over to Nick and Christina, who are from Dev2, and this is our very last Dev2 takeover of the channel. So before I get into that, if you are new to the show, the Race Up Dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk is your resource to get everything you need to land your pull request to Hacktoberfest. And as the clock is ticking, we're down to just 4 days, four or 5 days left. We want to make sure that you get all the resources you need this last week. So we've got a special guest on 3 times today, all throughout this week. And right now, as I said, we've got the crew from Dev2 who will be coming to work a little bit more on Forem, which is the open source Ruby on Rails app that powers the Dev2 site. And they'll tell you more about that in just a moment. So couple of things to run through before we get going. First of all, please ask your questions in chat. They are here to answer your questions, and they will love to hear your questions about Forem and about the things you're working on. You can see Nick there right in the chat already. Christina's in the chat as well. So ask those questions as you go along. If you want to post or share a link, such as like a link to a resource that someone mentions or your own work, that's totally fine. However, we do have a moderation bot that auto filters those links because the internet is a scary place. So if you'd like to post a link, just mention me @RaiseDevs, and I'll add you to the permit list so you can post those links. I'll be keeping an eye on chat the whole time. So just drop me a message @RaiseDevs. Hey, can I post a link? And I'll add you to the permit list and you'll be good to go. So last thing I'll say before I disappear and leave it to the wonderful folks from Dev. As I said, we do have 3 shows a day all this week. If you want to see those shows, you can find them at twitch.tv RaiseDev schedule. Stick around at the end of this show and I'll do a schedule overview for what we've got coming the rest of the day and the rest of the week. So stick around at the end of the show for that and I'll run you through what we've got to come. And then the final thing, if you haven't heard of Raise.dev before, we are a service to help you level up in your developer career. We have expert coaches who will work with you to get you the experience you need to get that promotion, that raise, your first developer job, whatever it is, and you can sign up completely for free now whilst we're in early access at Raise.dev. So that's enough of my waffle. Please welcome Nick and Christina to the show. Hey folks, how you doing?
Not too bad, and nothing wrong with waffles. Waffles are pretty tasty.
That's going to be our next stream. Wednesday and waffles will be off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, I'm down.
I would come on that stream.
Yeah. Well, enjoy this stream. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I'll bring some maple syrup from Canada. So.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, perfect. I've never actually had maple syrup. And with that bombshell, I will leave you all to your stream. Have a great one. See you on the other side, folks.
Yeah, thanks, man. Just going to say, hey, what's up, TK in the chat there. I'm trying to flex my streaming skills here, Christina, by multitasking.
Yeah. And Rafi, who we always appreciate seeing. Hello, Rafi.
Yeah. So how you doing today?
Pretty good. I had a late morning, but I'm doing it. I'm getting there. You can see my hair is all wet still. I haven't had coffee yet, but we'll be okay. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good. I have coffee, so that's good too. I'm properly repping Dev swag here again. I've got my coffee mug and my Dev shirt. This is one of my favorite T-shirts, though. Not just because it's got. I do like the traditional Dev logo, but it's a super comfortable shirt. And this mug, I've said it before, but I like it just because of the design pattern on it.
I finally ordered my Dev stuff because my parents are coming to Costa Rica and I can get it here without having to deal with all the
Yeah.
I will have for shirts.
Sure. So we've talked about waffles and coffee, so we've gotten the important stuff out of the way. So let's talk about something that's probably slightly more important than waffles and coffee.
Accessibility.
Yeah, exactly. So we're back again on the Raise Devs stream to work on an accessibility issue today. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Give me 2 seconds here. Hop into the matrix. Cool. I'm sharing the right screen so we're not seeing Inception in the stream. So today we're going to be working on an issue I opened, I think, September 9th. So not too long ago, just over a month ago. And it's to consider No Mouse Fridays in the application. We can just talk a bit about what this means first before we get into stuff. But keyboard accessibility, keyboard navigation is super important to accessibility. And implementing something like this allows you to find all the pain points in the application. I think the best way to summarize it would be frustrate your developers if the keyboard navigation isn't working because they have to use it, and then hopefully they fix it, or somebody from the community. We can at least open up issues around these things and then start tackling those one by one. So there's a pretty well-known accessibility expert, Marcy Sutton. I would say she's pretty well known. If you don't know who she is, maybe you can share that link to her Twitter in the chat there, Christina, or maybe send it to Joe. We can just post that in if you want to give her a follow. She knows a ton about accessibility, and this issue we're going to work on today, it's going to be using a package she actually created. So it's available on NPM. And if you look in the issue here, I'll zoom in a little bit here for the folks at home. I've got a new keyboard, so I'm staring at a bunch of keys just to make sure I'm not typing funny. So the solution here to implement the No Mouse Fridays is to use Marcy's No Mouse Days NPM package. Whenever we open issues on the Forem code base, we also ask about describing alternatives. You could do this with a browser extension that allows you to modify CSS for a page, but that requires more work from the developer or a contributor, and we're trying to reduce the friction to actually get this in place. So I've opted to go with the No Mouse Days package from Marcy. And let's see. Yeah, let's go to her to their package page. So that it's a GitHub repo, so it's open source. You can definitely check that out. I believe I linked that. Okay, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Christina.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So what this does is it's a package you install, and then the thing is, you don't want to do this for production because you obviously you do want it to work in production with keyboard navigation, but this is really a development tool to fix any keyboard accessibility issues. So what we want to do is we want to run this in development mode only. When you're building this in with, we're using Webpacker in the Forem code base, which is a bundler written in Node. And as you're bundling things, you can actually detect which environment you're in based on an environment variable. There's a bunch of stuff in regards to Webpacker that sets all this up. Webpacker is a Ruby gem that allows you to use Webpack within a Ruby on Rails application fairly easily. And so we're going to be building this out so that it's only built for the development environment.
I mean, if you really want to get some good PRs and issues, maybe put it into production.
yeah. Put it in prod and make it rain. So I just had to grab some Java bean juice there. Now, before we get into implementing it, I actually want to go into the source code of this to explain what the package actually does. And believe it or not,
student today, and so are you all, and he's going to teach us how to do this.
I'm also going to preface this with, and we've mentioned this last time we talked about accessibility, I am by no means even remotely close to being an accessibility expert. I feel like I'm doing okay, but I still have a ton to learn. So do not, I am not an expert. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I think the fact that you care and you want to learn more is a lot more than sometimes people want when they're developers. So I think it's a good it's a good place to be, to keep learning. So.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason why I like the streams too. Like anybody can tune in and provide feedback. I know like Todd Libby, who's pretty solid with accessibility. He came on the last one and gave some tips and stuff. So if you have any suggestions for things, just let us know in the stream. So we're going to talk a bit about what this does. Now, this is literally the package. This is really the code that does all this magic. I'll zoom in a little more here, looking on my new keyboard. Now, all this is doing is we'll explain the CSS here. For those who aren't aware, I'm not dumbing it down, but I just want to go through all these things just to make sure it's clear. So you have this chunk of CSS here up at the top. And what you can do is you have the star here, which means it's the is it universal selector or all selector? I always forget what to call it.
I think it's technically universal selector, but it basically like all, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So think of it like Thanos if you're a Marvel fan or something. It just, like everything. So what this does is this says literally every element on the page, I want to set the cursor to none, so you won't see a cursor. There's going to be no cursor happening. So visually, when you go on to your application, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be like, "Where's my mouse? Where's my mouse?" You'll still be able to click on things and they will work, but you're not going to know where to click because you can't see where the mouse is. So it's kind of fun in that way. I'm not really sure what pointer fine means. I guess it just makes it a really super skinny.
Yeah, let's look that up.
cursor.
You keep talking. I'll look up what pointer fine is because I haven't used that yet.
Yeah. So this first part here is more a visual thing for the CSS to hide your mouse cursor. The next part is the one that does the actual work. So what happens here is we're using the universal selector again, and there's a CSS property called pointer dash events. If you're not familiar with this CSS property does is you can actually prevent folks from using the mouse. So by saying pointer events none, it means anything you do with the mouse nothing's going to happen. And we also have the important value tagged on there as well. Is it part of do you call it as part of the value or like important on its own? I usually just say the not important.
Yeah, the not important. Yeah, I mean,
sorry, JavaScript popping in my head. Sorry. But what this does is we say we don't want the pointer events on literally any element on the page, and we're using important because we want to make sure it overrides any CSS that we have in the application. So this is literally the magic sauce right here. You could, like I mentioned, you could grab a browser extension that allows you to add styles to a page. You could paste in that chunk on your app, and when the page loads, all you'll have is keyboard navigation available to you.
You want me to tell you what pointer fine means?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay, syntax. The pointer feature is specified as a keyword value chosen from the list below. There's pointer none, pointer coarse, which I didn't know about either, and then pointer fine. And the primary input mechanism includes an accurate pointing device. I don't know.
Okay.
Coarse is the primary, includes a pointing device of limited accuracy. So it's like not very accurate. So still not 100% sure what that does, but that's what it is.
I'm gonna play it cool and pretend I understood everything you just said there. So but I'll just defer and say, hey folks, check out, just Google MDN space pointer dash event. Pointer.
Well, apparently you have to put it in an app media, like she has it there. So
Okay.
that's why I couldn't find it initially, and then I saw that it was with the app media.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is the CSS that we have here, and this is what we need to get into the page. So the next part that they have here is there's an add styles function, and what this does is it creates a style element tag, and it sets the type to text/CSS. I think you're fine even without that, but it's perhaps for older browsers to make sure that it processes it properly.
Yeah.
And then from there, the CSS element that you have, it has a style sheet property, which has a CSS text property, and we're setting that CSS text to what we have on line 1 there, the var styles equals. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we're going to check and we're going to append that new style tag to the head of the page that's on there. So that's why we're doing document.getElements by tag name, head, and 0. I have a feeling this package was probably written a while ago. For folks wondering, getElements by tag name is another type of selector. It's been around for quite a long time. I'm not positive, but it might have even been in Netscape like really long time ago. But you could do the same thing if you did want to throw a PR up to the repo here. You could say document.querySelector head and then you can do dot append child CSS. And the other thing that's happening here is when the window loads, we just want to call that function and add the styles. And that's what will give you the magic sauce on your page. It will, as we mentioned, because it's got the it's got the important in there, it's just going to override anything that's there. So even regardless of how the page loads, it's going to be that CSS rule is going to just take precedence. And that's what we're going to do. So we need to get this into the Forem code base.
Yeah.
So
basically, just another overview. See how Nick has the arrow on the page right now and he can click on things? We're not going to be able to see that with this code when we put this in, so that we have to use our keyboard.
Exactly. And you know what? Let's just do it here, and I'll show you before we even start doing it. So I always say this, but get familiar with your dev tools. So I'm just literally gonna paste this whole chunk of code in. Actually, I'll copy that and the function, and we're just gonna run this in here. Looks like the GitHub page has got a few JS errors. All right. Okay, cool. So what I've done here now is I have the add style function, and I have my styles like Marcy has in her project there. So now I'm just going to run add styles, and look, you can't see it. Well, you can see it when I'm over the page right now, and my mouse is not showing up.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. So you can see it when I'm in the dev tools, and then as I go up, boom, Thanos gone. I don't know.
Hey, we did that at the same time. That was good.
Yeah. We are not sponsored by Marvel, so we are not obliged to mention anything about Marvel. But it's, Thanos just always seems like a good default joke for stuff like that. So, cool. I'm just laughing in the chat. All right.
Yeah. So now you should be able to use the keyboard and move around if GitHub has good keyboard.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But there shouldn't be a mouse. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of curious how GitHub does react. So I'm gonna start up here. See, it's got to go through my stuff on my bar. Okay. Oh, whoops! It's got the dev tools open, so it's going over that. But let's click in here and let's see how GitHub reacts. Oh, I'm in the wrong window. Okay, so GitHub's working pretty well there. It's accessible. We see there's outlines on there. That's great. All right, good job, GitHub. All right, cool. Well, enough about GitHub. I'm going to refresh this page because I need my mouse back for a second. Because contrary to, I forget who tweeted that out a few weeks ago, but you're still a real developer if you use a mouse and a keyboard. So I don't know what was up with that dude saying all that crap, but all right. So we need to get this installed. So I'm just going to go back to the home page here for No Mouse Days. And just going to check out the instructions. So we just need to npm install no-mouse-days. On the Forem project, we use yarn. So we're going to do yarn add and then no-mouse-days. We're also going to add it for development mode only. So I'm going to come here into VS Code, zoom in a bit here. So I'm going to say yarn. Oh, wait, first I'm going to make it a new branch, no mouse days. Still getting used to my new keyboard. I'm using NB here. That's just a Git alias I have set up in my shell. But I'm just creating a new branch here. Because on the Forem team, we also like to prefix our branches with our username. For GitHub, it just makes things easier to sort out when you're going through PRs. So you can see it added my name there. Okay, so we're going to do yarn add no mouse days. And I'm going to say -d. This means dev dependencies because this dependency is only required in development mode. And it's not required for a production deployment, so there's no point in including it in the dependencies. So it goes into dev dependencies. So I'm just going to run that. And while that's going, you're going to see it pop up in here probably just after node sass. Just give it a sec here. There we go. So we got our no mouse days installed. Boom. All right. So that's good. Okay. So I'm just going to close the package.json file. Now, this is the part I just have to think a bit about. This is it's not difficult to include the package. So if we come back to the code here, they're saying, if process.env development, then import it, or you could apply it to a day of the week. This we do want to do a day of the week, but we also want it to not be for production. So this is not going to be the code that goes in.
Yeah.
Also, what's going on here, this is more newer JavaScript stuff. It's been, I don't know how long it's been in the browsers, but this is a dynamic import. So when you do import and the name of a package or a file in your project, what that does is it imports it asynchronously. So this import, it creates a promise, and you can either use async await to wait for it, or you can just go with the promise-based, venable. So that's what that's there for. Okay, cool. So yeah, so like I said, I'm just gonna think about where I want to put this. I'm thinking I want to put it in when Webpack builds, but I'm not positive yet. So for Webpack stuff, if we go into the code base here, so as I mentioned, it uses the Webpacker gem that allows us to use Webpack within a Rails application fairly easily. And there's different configs here. There's development. Environment is kind of the base for everything. So in the Forem code base, this is part of our configuration for Webpack. So we've got a few things in here like aliases and so on. There's a lot of this stuff is kind of out of the context of this, what we're working on. But if folks are interested in all things Webpack, you could check out Webpacker, the Ruby gem. Also, I believe it's webpackjs.org, the Webpack site. You can check that out as well. Yeah, and I'm looking at Cat Burby was mentioned in the chat. Make a Chrome extension that forces you not to use a mouse on Fridays. That sounds like it could be a good project. You could probably install that, and then you could package Marcy's npm package into that to get that functionality going. I know there's a Chrome extension. I forget what it is, but it's like styles or something, and it just allows you to put in arbitrary CSS onto a page. But I don't think you'd be able to pick the day of the week and stuff. So that actually sounds like it would be kind of cool, Cat Burby, for creating an extension like that. You could choose the day of the week or multiple days of the week. Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I'm sure Marcy would appreciate seeing her package being used that way. Okay. All right. So yeah. So I'm wondering the best way to do this, because if we go to dev2, I'm going to go to the live site for a second here. And let's open up the dev tools here. Just going to zoom in a bit because I know it's kind of hard to see these things sometimes. I'm going to go on the network panel, and I'm going to just select JavaScript. So I'm going to refresh the page, and this is going to show me just only the JavaScript requests being made. And there's a bunch of Webpack bundles in here. So that's what you see with, like, for example, all these tilde separated packages or .chunk.js files. So that's code splitting with Webpack. As I mentioned, check out the webpackjs.org site if you want to learn a bit more about that. The thing I'm looking for is I want to find the common script that is being loaded on every page, because that's probably the best place to put this. The other option is I could add it into the Webpack configuration perhaps and load it based on if it's you can do in Webpack. There's this notion of entry points. So typically, if you think of like a single page application, if you've worked with like Create React App or pretty much any of those newer frameworks, the the single page application, the way it usually works is you have an index.html page with a root element that your whole application bootstraps on. And you have this, it's typically an index.js file. If we were in a single page application, I would just import it directly in there and then we'd be done with it.
Yeah.
But in our case, as I mentioned, we're a Rails app. We're primarily server-side rendered. We use Preact in the front end as well, but it's really sprinkled in areas where we need to add logged on user interactions. So we don't have that scenario where I can just plunk it into like an index.js file. So I'm wondering if we look in the base, I'm not sure if this is a Webpack specific file. I mean, it's a Webpack generated file, but what I mean is I'm wondering if it's like comes in from Webpack. Okay. So this is base. Okay. Init notifications. Okay. This might, oh, actually this is coming from Rails. Sorry. So Rails, we use Webpacker and Webpack for all the, I want to say modern JavaScript in the sense that anything that's ECMAScript modules and Preact, we use Webpack, but Sprockets is the part of the asset pipeline in Rails, and that's just a different build sequence. So we could add it in there. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, so let's try that. And I just want to see if it's used on every page. So what I'm going to do is, just to get rid of some of this noise, I'm just going to add a filter here in the dev tools. So on the requests that are being made, I'm just saying I just want to see any files with base and a dash. So I know it's on the main page here. If I go to an article, okay, I still see the base being loaded. That's good. If I go to dashboard, okay, see on the dashboard, I don't think it was loaded. If we go, oh no, it is loading it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, I think it's a safe bet that it's probably used on all the pages here. If we load this one, the only thing I'm not certain of is maybe the administration section, but we can look at that after. So okay, so we're gonna go with the base JS, and let's come over here. So just explain how the base JS works. So this is the file is base.js.erb. So that's a Ruby template, and a Ruby template can render anything. In this case, we're rendering JavaScript. And this syntax in here that you see, this is how Sprockets is able to pull in everything into this file. Now, there's two things you can see here. There's this / equals required tree and then initializers. What this means is it's saying bring in all the JavaScript files in the initializers folder, and the base.js file concatenates everything. In development mode, it's not compressed, but I'm fairly certain in production it would be, or it should be. And then the other thing you can do is you can just require an individual file as well. So let's start off with this. So I'm going to go at the top here, and I'm going to say / equals require, and I guess we could add it into the initializers. Let's do that. So I'm going to look into the initializers folder.
Okay.
And let's see. Oh, it's under app JavaScripts. Yeah, okay. Runtime. Sure, let's go see in here. Class runtime. I'm going to open up my sidebar here. Okay, there's a ton of JS files. I'm just going to create one. No mouse. Actually, go camel case. In Ruby, they prefer snake case, I believe. But we're in JS land now, so my house. Here we go. No mouse days.js. And we're going to come over here, and let's just do we could do day of the week. Yeah, sure. So we're gonna say I don't want to get into const let debate, but I use const everywhere unless I know I need to change the value. And I know that const is not a real constant in the sense, if it's a primitive like a string, it's an actual constant value. But if it's an object, the reference is immutable, like it won't change, but you can alter properties on it. But in this case, the get day, it's returning a number, and the new date is a date object, so you could manipulate stuff in there probably. But this is just a preference. I've seen like lots of heated debates on Twitter, but it's just what I default to. We don't have a hard fast rule in the Forem code base about this, and honestly, it's kind of like something I don't really want to have a, a big debate about. Like if somebody puts let, I'm not going to block a pull request because they used let. To me, I don't know. It's just it's a useless conversation to have. Like the value is in what they're doing in the pull request. So let's go here, and what we can do is we can do the import mouse days, and I can't remember if the date method here gives you the actual day of the week, or if it's like the months, because like the months in JavaScript, it goes, I believe, 0 to 11, so December is 11. So
Okay.
I just want to check that. So I'm just gonna go into the dev tools again, and we're just gonna clear this out. Cool. And let's paste that in, and we're just going to say new date. Okay, so 2. It's Tuesday. All right, cool. So it is the actual day. So in our case, we want to do Friday, and I'm going to say we only want to disable mouse usage on Fridays. And this is a comment I like to add because it makes it clear what it is. I mean, I think in this case, perhaps it's fairly easy to derive what day of the week represents, but I'm putting it anyways. Okay, and then from here, we can do the import. And then the thing here is there's no, in the example that they provided, the then, so once this is imported, the package, there's nothing to do with it. It's just being imported. We don't get a return value. There's nothing to do with it. Or if there is a value in here, there's nothing of value in it to process post import of the package. So I'm even just gonna remove this because the promise is gonna resolve regardless. It's just gonna run.
Yeah.
And let's see what it's saying here. Import and export must. Oh, okay, yeah, this is because it's a dynamic import. Okay, that's an ESLint error. We'll look at that after. Okay, so just to recap, we're getting the day of the week, and if it's Friday, we import the package. So I'm going to save that. There's still a few other things we need to do.
Hey, Nick, can I ask you one thing?
Yeah.
It was just in the chat. They said not related, but they were just wondering about your font choice.
So I am using Dank Mono. I will paste it in the chat. It's a paid font. I honestly never thought I would pay for a font, but I really liked the way it looked. And it says I'm currently timed out of chat. Okay, wait, let's try that again.
You don't have the ability to put in the link, so just put it into the private and I can put it in.
Oh, no, it's not that. It's, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's just dank.sh. Private chat, dank.sh. It's a font that's created by someone that works at Formidable Labs in the UK. Yeah, I am banned. That's right, TK. I'm pretty sure that's the Raise Devs team, just making sure nobody puts anything naughty. Yeah, Sad Trap Bone. That's right. Thanks, Raise Devs.
Yeah, I have the power. Nick doesn't, so we're good.
Yeah, so as I was saying, the font, it was made by somebody from the Formidable Labs team in the UK. I don't think I'm saying their name correctly, but it's Philip Pluckthorne, I believe. He's done a lot of work. They've done a lot of work at Formula Labs, but I know some notable work they've done is working on Urkel, which is a GraphQL client specific to React. And they've also created this font. I'm sure they've done all other kinds of great work too. I'm a VIP now. Ooh, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, now I can put in my shady links. All right, join my dark web ring, folks. Yeah, so so that's who made that, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask what the theme is at some point. I alternate right now between In Bed by 7 p.m. and Night Owl. These are both themes made by the phenomenal Sarah Drasner. The Night Owl one's been around for a while. I actually got a T-shirt delivered to me a few weeks ago. It was for a fundraiser for Black Girls Code, but she created another one called In Bed by 7 p.m. because I believe the story, at least I don't know her, but just following her on Twitter, from what I read, it sounds like one of her coworkers loved the Night Owl theme, but they go to bed really early. So she made this, I guess it's probably based on Night Owl to some degree, but she made one for them so that it's like In Bed by 7 p.m. So, for the early crowd, for those grabbing the early bird special in the restaurants, In Bed by 7 p.m. is for
That's
you.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know. I've been sleeping a lot better, but I do have a tendency to go to bed late.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm on a farm, and the person comes that helps our goats comes at like 5 in the morning. So I try to go to bed
that'll do
early.
it. Yeah. Do you have a rooster on the farm?
No, thank goodness. We used to have roosters here. They drive me crazy.
Okay. I guess you had one for supper one
I
day or something.
have kids. They wake me up at 5. They're
Yeah,
just not as loud as the roosters.
they're like tiny roosters, that you love, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, roosters, don't knock them, love them. And we're going on really weird tangents here, but that's cool because me and Christina always go on weird tangents. But
Yeah, I'd say this is a pretty normal one for us.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about. So what's going to happen now is if I go back to that no mouse days file, it's going to get imported if you come into the base.js erb because it's in the initializers folder, and it's going to run as part of the base.js package. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to start up my website. So bin/startup, and just going to slide over the sharing bar because it's blocking me. Cool. And if folks are wondering, in the terminal, I'm using ZSH or ZSH, depending on where you come from. It's got dank mono in there too. I believe it's enabled in VS Code for the terminal. And I'm also using the Agnoster theme. So just some more layouts and stuff. If you're curious about all my stuff, I'll drop a link to my whole setup after. Okay, so this site is building. Let's go to our local host. Always have the dev tools open when you're doing local development. Little power tip if you aren't aware of it, but when you have the dev tools open, you can actually disable the cache. You can see it right here under the network tab. It's kind of nice because in development, there'll be a lot of times where you're like, I don't see my changes, and so having the dev tools open will help with that. All right. Okay, let's clear this. Okay, so we're on my local environment. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to go back here and okay, it looks like everything built okay. The website ended up running, no errors. That's good. So first thing I want to look at is I want to go back to that base.js file. And we're going to look up here way at the top. Let me just stretch this out here. Of course, it's the world's largest file. Okay. I'll probably get carpal tunnel syndrome by the end of this stream. Okay, let's go. Yeah, and Ironically, I can't use the command up arrow to get up there quicker, but you know what? Why don't I just do find no dash mouse? There we go. Okay, so this you can see is the base.js file. We can see that our thing was imported and it ran. Don't think we have any errors related. And then, so that's because of what I mentioned here. We have the required tree initializers folder, so that imports everything from there. And it's concatenating our no mouse days file into there. And that's what we see right here. So far that looks good. There's still some work to do, but one thing I'm noticing already is it doesn't appear to have applied it. I'm going to refresh the page. Sometimes could be caching, even though I have the cache disabled, but okay, I'm not seeing anything happen, but we do have an error. So let's check that out. This is in a Preact component. Okay, that's a separate issue. I saw an issue opened up on our repo for that. So that could be blocking this thing running. So let me just go check that out. Sometimes when JS breaks, it just like nukes everything. So let's go back to VS Code. I'm going to go to the homepage.jsx and tags. What was it? First element child. And since we're here, this is just a little tip as well. When you want to get, you can get like first child of an element using the DOM APIs, but the first element of a DOM node is not necessarily an actual element. It could be a text node like white space or stuff. So by using first element child, you're guaranteed to get the first actual node. That's an element. For now, though, I am going to just comment this out, and we're going to come back here. Page is going to reload because of Webpacker and Webpack. Okay, so we don't have any errors now. And okay, I still see the mouse, so something's up. So let's go back to our code. No mouse days. I'm going to just, we'll put a breakpoint in there, but I'll add a then here like they had, even though it's a no op. No op meaning there's just nothing to do. It's just a short term to say no operation. And then console.log data. Okay, I'm gonna refresh the page. This won't automatically refresh the page when you make changes in the files that are in the base.js because that's the sprockets gem running, and it's not linked to Webpacker or Webpack, so you don't get that reloading like you do with Webpack. So let's go back here, look for the no mouse. Okay. Oh, all right. It's working as expected. It's not Friday. I just clued in. All right. That makes 100% sense. All right.
Yeah, we need to put it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So,
I am going to pause for 1 second. We've had a few more people jump in and just kind of asking exactly what we're doing. We are using this package from Marcy Sutton, who created this no mouse days, and you can pick the day. Either you can have it running all the time or you can pick the day of the week when you want to have it running, and it forces developers, we're using it just in development and not in production. It forces the developers to use the keyboard. You won't be able to see your mouse because of the CSS that's in the package. It gets rid of your mouse. And so you have to use the keyboard to navigate a site. And that really helps you see like where you're having issues, where someone who can't use a mouse and has to use a keyboard is not going to be able to navigate your site. And so we're using this package to do that.
Yeah. And I just highlighted for those who were just joining in, this is a CSS that we inject into the page in development mode. I'll just recap it real quick. It hides the cursor, so visually you do not see a mouse cursor, and it also disables any clicking events on a mouse in the page using the pointer dash events property in CSS. You can check that out on MDN and just Google MDN space pointer dash events. All right. So this is a good example of when like we wrote the code correctly and it's actually working properly, but it's not Friday. So we're switching it to Tuesdays for a moment. And as I mentioned, this page won't automatically reload because it's not part of the Webpack part. So I'm just going to reload it, and I have this breakpoint down here on line 4272. If I reload, it's going to hit there. Okay, let's run that. Okay, this could be source map issues, but okay, let's check that out. We got some errors. Okay, that's better at least. Okay, failed to resolve module specifier. No mouse day. Okay, why can't? Oh, I know what's going on. Okay, so I don't think we can use it in the base.js in Sprockets. Okay. The reason being is dynamic imports are supported in the browser, but to the npm package is not available in the browser. So a bundler will typically put this in. And so we need to use Webpack to do this, I think. So it's not the end of the world. But so it's not. So just to be clear, the dynamic import does work in the browser. We don't have to worry about like, do we need to support IE 11 or anything like that, because this is a strictly development mode tool, and all the developers working on this will be on either Firefox, Chrome, or some Chromium-based browser. We still don't have official browser documentation, but about which ones we support. But it's pretty much like
something for me to work on.
Yeah. True. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the import works. The problem is it doesn't find this no mouse days because there's no file reference to it in the page right now. We could do. I don't know if that would work, but you could maybe you couldn't even import the file because it's in the base.js, so it gets concatenated. So you'd be kind of saying import myself, and so all right. So we're gonna have to rethink this, which is fine. You know, that's the beauty of being alive and hopefully kind of knowing what you're doing. All right. So
that's why I let Nick take the wheel today.
So there's another way we could do it. Maybe I'm just going to stop the web server here and let's come back here. So part of the build that happens when we run stuff is we run bin/webpack. This is just a script file that's run with Ruby code, but it runs Webpack under the hood. I'm just going to run it so you can see these are just Ruby warnings I get all the time. There's something in my environment that's a little wonky, but everything still works. So, okay, so you can see that it ran Webpack and it built all these things. So that's good. I do have a reason for showing this. So I'm going to open up the file bin/webpack. As I mentioned, it's just a file here and it's running certain things. Okay, cool. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to environment, and what this does is, here, let me close the other thing so you can get a better picture. So this is what helps generate the entire Webpack configuration. The way it works with Webpacker is you have these files in a folder called packs. So if we go packs, I believe this folder is configurable, but like you can change it, the name. But you have all these JSX or JavaScript files in here, and they're in this packs folder. All of these things translate to Webpack entry points. A Webpack entry point is kind of like the starting spot for your application or on a specific page wherever it gets loaded. So in a single page application, your entry point is typically index.js, like I was mentioning at the beginning. And then everything gets imported from there. In our case, because we are mainly a server-side rendered application, we have multiple entry points, and we load these pack files on certain pages. So I don't know if we have one that kind of shows up on every page. There's a few things we could do. We could potentially add it to, I guess, like every page if we created a new pack file. That could be a little harder to manage, and it's really only for development. So I'm trying to think of another way to do this. And one way we could do this is if I open up the environment.js file. As I mentioned, this is what helps us generate the Webpack configuration. So you can see here's some, this is the chunk splitting of Webpack that I've configured, but this will generate the whole, the whole configuration. So what I'm going to do is, this is like a little debugging hack I do. I'm going to say throw environment, and I believe is environment. Yeah, that's right. So environment is going to be the Webpack configuration, and I'm just going to say JSON.stringify. I don't actually. Let's do it this way first. I don't think I need to stringify it, but we'll see. So what should happen in theory is I'm going to run bin Webpack again, and it's going to throw an error, and the error should be the Webpack configuration. So if I there we go. So you can see this whole thing being generated. This is just a debugging thing I do. You don't typically in a project, once Webpack is configured, there's not much you need to do normally unless you're adding entry points. So here you can see I have all these entry points that are being generated. And these correlate to the files we see on the side here. If we come back to the pack files, pack/admin.js, for example. So we'll see it here. And if I come to the environment, of course, I went to the wrong file. Let's go back to that. Okay. So you can see the search.jsx file is there. And that's going to map to, if I look in here, search, and then it's right here. So this is the Webpack entry point that gets generated based on that packs file. Now, there's a neat thing you can do with entry points, because I've had to configure Webpack on several projects now. The entry point can actually be an array. So what I'm thinking is, once we have all the entry points that come in, they come in to the file this way. Let me go back to the environment. And in fact, we can even do it in the development one here. But what's going to happen is we can actually loop through all the entry points, and we can convert those single entry points into an array of entry points. And what that will do is it will load both those files. So we can inject the no mouse days into each entry point, which should almost guarantee that it's on everywhere. The thing too with the Forem code base is, this is just other stuff that if people aren't aware, is we use something called instant click. So as you start traversing through pages, people always say like the pages work really fast. And part of that is server-side caching because it's primarily a content-based site. But the other thing is we have this instant click library, and what it does is if you're on mobile during the touch start event, or if you hover on any device that allows for hovering, so like desktop or your laptop, it will start prefetching the page, and then it transitions. So once you actually click on the link, it's like almost instantaneous. And because of that, stuff stays in the DOM from what I've seen. So even if there's a couple pages we've missed, I think the no mouse will still stay there. So we'll see about that. So I know a few other people jumped in here, but so just to recap, we're going to enhance all the entry points in Webpack and only in development mode, and inject this no mouse days code as we go along. So to do that, let's come over here. I have that no mouse days right now. I'm gonna have to take it out of that folder, because right now, if it's in that folder, it will get loaded with all the other ones in the sprockets, which is the whole separate build. I got to take a sip of water here. I'm talking quite a bit. Remember, devs, hydration is important.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. So
Moving,
yeah.
getting up, walking, all these things are important.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I'm going to move this. So I'm going to do this from the command line because it'll just be easier. Look at me, mom. I'm a real developer. I'm using a keyboard, not the mouse. That's being sarcastic. Just clarifying that. Okay, so I'm going to move this app slash JavaScript. That's right. Initializer. Oh, no, assets. Sorry. Assets, JavaScript. Initializers, and then there's this no mouse days file, and I'm going to move it to app JavaScript. This is where the more modern code goes with that uses Webpack, and I'll just say no mouse days .js, or actually I can just say move it to that folder. Cool. So now if I go to no mouse days and type, I've got a new keyboard, still getting used to it. So you can see it's been moved. It's in app JavaScript now. So now what I'm going to do, we're not going to run anything yet. I'm going to come to the environment.js. Okay, we're going to go to the development.js one. So when Webpacker uses Webpack, environment is kind of like the baseline for all the configurations that will get built. The production one is what gets built when we're deploying. And then there's a development one. And we already have a few things in here, like we changed the type of source maps and so on. But what I'm going to do here is I am going to get the, the entry points. So you can do config dot, where is it again? Hold on a sec. Let's just gonna run it again just to make sure I have it in the right place. So this is going to throw an error again, and we're going to see our output. Webpack configurations can get big, so I'm just trying to remember where the entries are. I think it's top level. So if I come up here, config, mode result. Okay, I think it's top level. Okay, so let's close that, and we'll just test this. We won't do it in the development yet. I just want to make sure I'm getting it right here. So we'll say certain environment dot entry. I think that should just do the entries. Yeah. It did. Okay, perfect. All right, so I do have the right thing. So this is an array. So what we're going to do here is it's an array of strings. So we're going to say array, environment dot entry. And actually, is it an array or object? Oh yeah, it's an object. So it's an object with keys. Okay, so environment.entry. So we can do object.entries. And we can say environment.entry. So object.entries is, I can't remember when this came out. Ever since ES6, I don't know when all these features come out. But this will return an array of the key and the value. From what I remember, it's been a while. I don't know. I feel like 5 years have gone by since Hacktoberfest. We've just been like so busy doing stuff.
You get the key value pairs.
Yeah. So I just want to say that output. So you see here, it's actually, it's the key value pairs, but it's an array of key values. So let's go back to there. Okay, so that's what we want. So this gets the entries. And so what we're going to do is we'll say const updated entries. And it's equal to that. It's an array. So I'm going to map over it. close my sidebar here. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay, there we go. It's an array. And you can see here, thanks to IntelliSense, we have map popping up. Also, for those who aren't aware, TypeScript is what powers a lot of Visual Studio Code. So for those that don't like TypeScript, I have bad news for you. TypeScript is what gives you all the IntelliSense in Visual Studio Code. All right, so as I mentioned, each one in here in the array is an array itself. So we're going to destructure the array. And it's going to be key and then value. And then from there, we can process that. And we want to return the new mapped item. So we'll say we still want to return the key, because the key does not change. It's the value that changes. So the value is going to end up actually becoming, I'm going to just put it for now, but I'm just going to say boo, just to show this in action. And then, whoops, and then value. And then, so this gives us an updated entries. And then what we're gonna do is environment is the entire Webpack config. So we're gonna set the value of entry to this new updated values that we've added for the entry points. So I'm gonna say object.from entries. And I'm going to use updated entries. Now, if everything is right, what I should see happen is you should see all the entry points turn into values with arrays. So you see here, validated inputs, and then now we have an array. It's boo / validated inputs. So it looks like we're in business, and so let's go back here. And yeah, so we're going to need the actual file. So the actual file.
Do you want to take just 1 minute and just say again kind of why you're going through these steps now versus what we did before, just at high level?
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so what we were doing is we're trying to inject Marcy's package into our application. We don't want this to be in production code. We only want it to be in development mode. So what we first started off with was there's a base.js.erb file. Let me go back there because thanks for pointing that out, Christina, because I know some people popped in on the stream a little later. So base.js.erb is a Ruby template. The Ruby templates can generate whatever you want. In this case, we're building JavaScript file. Sprockets, which is the Ruby gem, I believe it up until Webpack 6, it was the default. I think Webpacker or the Ruby gem is the default now. I'm not positive about that, but what Sprockets does is it's able to read this base.js.erb template, and based on this syntax / equals require _ tree initializers, for example, that means import all the scripts in that folder. You can also import just an individual file, so like lib/xss. This all works. We saw in our code. If I come back to the browser, because I don't think this has changed. Okay, and then we'll find. Okay, so in the base.js file, it imported the file like we expected to, but there's this JavaScript error. Uncaught and promise, type error, failed to resolve module specifier, no - mouse - days. So just to elaborate on this, import here is a dynamic import, which is a somewhat newer feature of the ECMAScript language, aka JavaScript. It's supported in the browser that we're using, and anybody doing development would have a browser that supports this. The problem is it can't find this import called no - mouse - days. The reason being is this is an npm package. It's in your node modules folder. Your node modules folder is not accessible from your live application, whether you're in development mode or production mode. This is where bundlers come in. There's newer bundlers that are kind of changing how this all works, but that's another discussion. But Webpack, what it does is it knows that this is a dynamic import. It will go find that no-mouse-days package, and it will know to put it into a separate JS file that will be accessible in your application, so that when it does this dynamic import, it will find it, because that JavaScript asset is actually on your live site. And that's why it works when you're using a bundler. But in this case, it doesn't work because the NPM package without a bundler is not accessible. So we had the right idea, but we had to scrap it. So we went into Webpack land. I know folks can be intimidated by Webpack. There is a lot in there. Out of the box these days, I think they do a pretty decent job of just allowing you to use it out of the box. But in our case, we're doing some funky stuff here. What we're doing is we're modifying the entry points of a Webpack configuration. And I'll just recap what Webpack entry points are again quickly. Maybe while I'm doing that, Christina, if you can find the Webpack docs just talking about entry points, maybe paste that in the chat. This kind of goes along with it. I keep saying it's good to know your tools. Like, even if you're not the person in charge of Webpack, I'd strongly suggest just trying to read up a bit about it, because then you can kind of understand how everything's working in your application. So the Webpack entry points are kind of like the starting point of a particular page. In a single page application, that is typically index.js. You'll see this in Create React App or similar tool chains that allow you to build up single page applications quickly. In our case, as I've mentioned a couple times, we are a Ruby on Rails app primarily. We rely heavily on server-side rendering. So most of the stuff we do is on the Ruby side. It's cached heavily on the server, and like with edge caching and all kinds of cool caching tech. But on the front end, we use Webpack just for certain things. Like there's a subscribe button on an article page. It's kind of like interactivity sprinkled within the site where it makes sense. And to get these things working, we need to reference these entry points. Which is just, in the end, it ends up being this little JavaScript that you just reference with a script tag. But and then that will basically run that JavaScript. Like, forget Webpack for a second. It's just, once a script is on a page, it just runs. In our case, these entry points can also have multiple values. It can be an array. And what we're doing here is we're tweaking the Webpack configuration to allow it to have multiple entry points. And unless I'm mistaken, this should work, because like I'm pretty sure I've done this before. I hope I'm right, because otherwise I'll just look pretty silly. But whatever. It's Tuesday. It's a pandemic. I got a shirt on, so it's all good. It's all good.
It's Tuesday, and I was like, wait, it's Tuesday? That's how bad I am today. I'm just like, wait, it's we've been talking about it being Tuesday.
I'm bad with that too. It almost happens every week where I think Tuesday is Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then, then it's the whole pandemic time just creeps in. All right. So, so as I was mentioning, we want to turn these entry points into an array of entry points. An array of values, which are multiple JavaScript files. So what we're doing is we're using the object.entries, which is a newer JavaScript API for the object in JavaScript. And it allows us to get an array of key value pairs, which themselves is also an array. And what we're doing here is we're just mapping, and we're still keeping the same key. And because the key is the name of the entry point, that has to stay the same. The only difference is the value. So for example, like if we go back in here, like actually right down on my screen here, there's this web share entry point. The original entry point was just a string that was this file here that I have highlighted, the webshare.js. In our case, I want to make it an array, and I want to add in our no mouse days. I put a silly string in there for now, just called boo, just to test it out. But that's what we're doing.
Halloween.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even think of that, but yeah. All right. Okay, so now we're going to actually reference the real file. So this should be in, okay, so I got my IntelliSense popping up, app/JavaScript/no mouse days. Oops, not that. Okay. That's good. And then, so this generates the new updated entries, but then we have to update the actual Webpack configuration. So we're going to override the entry property of the Webpack configuration, and we're going to refill it with this mapped values that we updated. And we can do that using the other object API method that's new from entries. And this here, as I mentioned, if you're just tuning in, this is kind of my way to debug Webpack configurations in a scenario like this, like in Webpacker. I think if you're using Gatsby, they actually have a debug mode where you can actually generate your Webpack config. So they probably just console log it out if you say I'm in debug mode or something. But okay, I'm going to rerun this. So I'm running bin/Webpack. This is I'm assuming it comes with Ruby on Rails. I don't know if we wrote this script or not, but I think it's Ruby on Rails. So, or maybe the Ruby gem does that. Okay, so you can see now here, all these entry points, they're arrays, validate inputs, for example, file inputs, and then I've got the 2 script files being referenced now. So that looks good to me. And I'm going to just comment out my throw there. So it's going to actually do the real Webpack generation now. And then I'm going to click clear here again. I'm going to run bin/Webpack. Just make this a little bigger. And, oh, okay, interesting. This dot entry to object is not a function. Hold on a sec. Okay. Entry to object. Okay, wait, maybe I did something wrong. Well, not maybe, I did something wrong.
Maybe the error's wrong.
There's no candy coding it. Yeah, I messed up. Okay, so let's just try. I'm just gonna go into Node here. It's going in the browser before, but you can do the same thing if you're just in Node. So let's see here. Let's do object.from entries, and let's say an array, and like we know it's key value, so key, and I'm just putting text in here. This is just to make sure I'm just using it properly. Okay, that's right. So it generated a property with those 2. That's right. Okay. Maybe it's not an array. Let's go Webpack entry point. Go into the docs here. Maybe I was doing it wrong. So you have here, yeah. So that's if you have 1 entry point. If you have potentially more than 1, it's an object. That's good. That's good. Where did I see it? Multi-page app. Okay, so here's what I was talking about, like multi-page application. So that's kind of what we're doing. Man, is it not an array? Hold on a sec. Maybe I was just smoking something and did not know what was going on. All right, Webpack entry point array value. Okay, no, those are all string. Yeah, okay, here. So we have here. So this is an example of where you have a few entry points being run.
You want to make it a little bit bigger?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I had it zoomed on the other page, but not this one.
Oh.
So you can see here, here's a mix of, so this is a one entry point with one JavaScript file. This one here is multiple. These aren't JavaScript files, but these are packages that are being imported. But you can see that you can use an array as well. There's also depend on, okay. I don't know. It looks like what I did was okay. Let me just double check again. So let's generate the whole Webpack entry. Sorry, the whole Webpack file and see what it looks like. Exit. Whoops. Run bin Webpack. It's going to throw an error with our config again. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go to the top entry. Oh, interesting. It shouldn't be an array. You see how it's an array here?
Yeah.
That's not right. So interesting. Okay, I'm just gonna take out the code I used to generate things here, and let's just run the bin Webpack again. And I'm assuming it will be properly formatted. Oh no, it still says it's in an array there. Okay, interesting. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's because I'm not doing JSON.stringify, so that's how it's showing it.
Okay.
Let's see here, JSON.stringify. So this JSON.stringify will take an object and turn it into a string. It's typically used for doing web requests if you're passing payloads in JSON. You can also pretty print it by, there's a few other parameters you can do here. So I forget what the null is, the number of spaces I can't remember what the null is. But the last one is you can say how you want to do the white spacing in it. And JSON, yeah, okay. Cool, so let's run that. Okay. That is not what I thought it would generate. that is, all right. We're deep in the matrix now. Okay, that's not what it should. Oh, snap. I know what I did wrong. I don't need this. There we go. Okay, so this is what the actual Webpack file looks like. Okay, it's right. So it's an object and so on. Okay, so I'm going to put my thing back in here and I'm going to run it again. So this should have the updated entry points with array values. So you can see here. Okay, so it looks correct now. App JavaScript, no mouse days. And if I click on that, it opens the file. That's good. Okay. Interesting. So, okay, so everything appears to be okay. I'm going to go back to Webpack. It's always like, yeah, just put in this little package and then everything will work.
No problems.
Yeah. No, but I'm kind of
hour and a half later.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad we're running into these issues because it's giving me a chance to show folks how some of these things work. Okay, let's close that. Environment.js. Okay, I'm going to comment this out. Yeah, that's right. Al7 and San RJ, developer's biggest lie. This should work now. Yeah, I feel like the new thing people would say is works on my Docker. You know, it's like, well, it should because it should be the same everywhere. But anyways, okay, so we're gonna run bin/webpack now. It's not gonna throw the error to give us the output now. It's gonna run the actual webpack command, and we should see the same error. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just. The beauty of working in open source and open source tools is you actually have access to the source code. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. So if we read the stack trace here, let's see what it's really complaining about. This dot entry to object is not a function. Okay. I'm just going to Google that before I I'm trying to avoid debugging an actual Webpack code because I have done that before, but I just want to see. So object is entry dot object. No, entry dot get is not a function. That looks similar. Okay. Eager. Okay. These are all individual. Okay, this is Webpack 5 stuff. So this is not what we're dealing with. We're in Webpack 4 land still. Okay, let me go back to the actual error. Just going to read through it to better understand. At module exports to Webpack config.
Also, when I was a teacher, this was something that I talked about a lot because students would never do this. If you get an error, read your errors.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid of the errors. They're there for a reason. They will help you out. That was one of the things I constantly had to help students kind of just like navigate and understand that like the errors, if you're getting an error and then if it changes and you get a new error, these are good things. You're getting closer to what you want. So errors
for sure. And not only that, it says what the error is, and if it gives you access to, if you have access to the files, go into the file. And in this case, I don't know what the error is yet, but sometimes, like say a package throws an error, like literally like cannot instantiate because of X. If you go into the actual source code, there's probably somewhere in there where it says cannot instantiate because of X. So you can see where the error is thrown, and then you can actually kind of go back up, and then you're like, okay, it's throwing that error because I didn't pass this thing, or like my thing's not in the right state, you know? So it's yeah, exactly. And get good at Googling. The thing too with errors is sometimes what happens is you can't Google the exact error you get because it could be specific to your like the error could be referencing files on your system and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can pull out like the important parts of the error, you can usually find something on the Googles. So, all right. So this is saying, okay.
You could cry.
Yeah.
I cry while coding sometimes.
All right. So, okay. Rails Webpacker base.js. Okay, so this dot entry to object. Okay, interesting. So I think my Webpack configuration is valid. I think the Webpacker gem, which generates the Webpack config, is not expecting me to do what I'm doing. I think that's what's happening here, because this entry here is already an object. And then it's saying to object. So I'm not really sure why it would be doing that. So this is in JavaScript code. So I'm just going to put a debugger in here. And what you can do is, let's go into...
Glad we're having this discussion in the chat. I feel like more people should admit they cry when they code.
Oh yeah, that's
the nice part about working remotely. You can cry real quick, get over it, and keep going.
Okay, bin Webpacker.
And then when you do something right, you can dance. So that's the nice thing about being a remote worker.
Okay, so how is this running? When it's in regular Webpack, you can do like you can run node and then debug break, and then you can stop in that file. But I'm just actually, I wonder if I can do that even if the thing's running. So because this is in the Webpacker package, but yeah, wait a minute. Let's see, this dot entry. Let's to object. So let's look that up. So to object method. It should convert it to an object, but whoops, that's not what I wanted to look for. I honestly don't know if this is an actual native thing. I feel like they might have actually added it to the prototype of the object. So see. Yeah, it's not part of the standard API. So this is something that they do. So let's see where that's at. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do. Oh wait, I think I know what it might be, because I recreated the entry. I wonder if because I returned a regular object, I wonder if I killed the fact that they have this two object method. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say throw this dot entry dot to object type of this dot entry object, and then we'll just do that. So this should return the type, and then wherever I had that debugger I don't need. And then I know we're getting to an hour and a half. I'll just try this out, but I think that's what's happening. So give me 2 seconds here. Let's run this. This is also a good example of do not add things to the prototype of a native thing in JavaScript. This used to be a popular thing to do. Okay, so so it's saying undefined. So it's telling me that this two object method does not exist. So now this that was a little bit of detective work, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out. This is where I'm in manipulation, and I'm going to run it again. It's still going to throw the error, but I'm suspecting that two object is going to equal something function. There you go. So that's what the issue is. So okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you think we should still go for a little bit, Christina, or should we wrap it up, or what? I kind of know what the issue is here now. It's
I think maybe we should wrap up kind of what you think going forward that you're going to do. We don't necessarily have to code it out here unless people want us to, but just kind of summarize where you think it went wrong, because you just kind of talked about that, and what you're going to do going forward so that we can actually implement this and force our developers to use the keyboard.
Cool. All right. So I guess first thing, if you could, okay, yeah, Joe's saying we can keep going. I think we're probably going to wrap up because I think we have other stuff going on shortly. I know I have something coming up in a bit. But I'm just going to recap. Sorry, I'm laughing at Joey's thing. How dare you have other commitments?
We love you, Joe, but we love other people too.
Okay, so I'm going to recap everything we did. And while I'm doing that, Christina, if you could relink the issue we're working on, because if people keep track of that, they'll see a pull request get associated to that by me probably today or tomorrow. So the whole goal of this was to enable keyboard accessibility only on Fridays. This is a package from Marcy Sutton called no-mouse-days that allows you to do this fairly easily. What the goal of it is really to frustrate folks on Fridays if our application does not work properly with keyboard navigation, because they're going to be like, I'm tabbing and I can't get to the article, or I can't, it doesn't focus on the search, and then that frustration will hopefully generate a bunch of issues that will fix all these accessibility issues in regards to keyboard navigation. That's the goal of this. And I think it's a good thing to do, because it's not just the core team that contributes. It's also, we have many external contributors, and I think it's just good to kind of keep tabs on this every week. I think it's a good idea. So the initial idea was to add it to the base.js file, which is a herb template, which is a Ruby template. So I'll just load that up again. That's base.js.herb. So what this does is it concatenates all the files in these folders or these individual files, generates this base.js file. And this is included on every page maybe not the admin section. That's something we still had to look into. So the idea was to put it here because this is a common file that's loaded on every page. We went ahead and did that, but we got a JavaScript error. Well, we got two JavaScript errors. One, the first was we had it set to only do it on Fridays, so our code wasn't running. We found that out fairly quickly. Then we switched it to Tuesdays, and then it was working, but then it was throwing an error. So we were using, if I come back to it, we're doing this dynamic import here. Dynamic imports are supported in the browsers that folks on the team and external contributors develop with. So that wasn't the problem. The error being thrown was it's saying it couldn't find this no-mouse-days package. The reason for that is the no-mouse-days package is in the node modules. This is not exposed in your web application like as a folder. It's something that everything in node modules will typically get handled by a bundler like Webpack, Parcel, newer ones like Snowpack, which is an interesting one you should check out. So we realized, okay, well, we have to do this in Webpack land now. The thing with our application is it's primarily a Ruby on Rails app. It's heavily focused on content. So it's a content-driven site. Most things are cached on the server side as markup. We have some sections of interactivity in the site, like the onboarding, a subscription button on article pages, for example. And those are using Preact and more modern JavaScript techniques. Those all get bundled outside of the typical Rails asset pipeline, which is the first things we were talking about there, the base.js.erb. This stuff gets built using Webpack. So in our Webpack, though, we use Webpack has this notion of entry points. In our case, we use a Ruby gem because it's a Rails app, as I mentioned. And in there, we have a Webpacker gem. And this is a Ruby gem that allows us to integrate Webpack fairly easily. But because we're not a single page application, we have multiple entry points in Webpack, meaning we have several kind of like starter scripts that can run on different pages, and they get referenced on each of these different pages. So for example, on our articles page, where if somebody's viewing your blog post on dev, for example, it loads an article page.jsx file, which is that entry point for that particular page. So we have these multiple entry points. And so to add this no mouse days script, we'd have to say like load it in each of these. It's kind of not maintainable in the sense that one, we'd have to add it to all these files. Then if new files came in, we would have to make sure that folks remember to add it. So to me, it seems like a bit of a maintenance nightmare. So what I thought of was we can modify these Webpack entry points. Mm-hmm. So Christina linked the Webpack documentation for entry points, I believe. But if you don't mind linking it again, if it's way up in the chat. So what you can do with these entry points is typically they're one file, but they can also be multiple files as an array. So if we come back to this environment.js file, which is one of the files that generates the Webpack configuration in the context of Webpacker, we can actually say this entry property of the entire configuration, which is an object, we can get its entries. So that means we're getting an array of key value pairs for all of those object properties and values. And then that gives us an array, so we can use the out-of-the-box array methods such as map that's available in the JavaScript language. And from there, we destructure here the value of the entry, which itself is an array. And the two array items are the key and the value. So this is just array destructuring going on. If you're not sure what that is, just Google MDN space destructuring and you'll get a good explanation. And so we're mapping here and we're returning an entry like we were receiving an entry. The key stays the same because that we don't want it to change. So like article page, for example, that has to stay the same. But what we can do is we can change its value so that the value is an array. Webpack is able to process this and say, I have 2 JavaScript files, and I'm going to, I guess it kind of bundles both of those into this entry point. So the value here in the variable there is the original one that we get from these pack files that I was talking about.
Mhm.
But I'm also adding an additional script, which is our no mouse days script. So the idea is we generate a Webpack configuration only for development mode that will inject these no mouse days into all these entry points, so that when we go to all these pages that have a reference to these entry points, it will activate the no mouse days code. So this is a good example of Marcy's package does something very simple, and it's easy to pop into like a single page or something, or a script.
Yeah.
But when you, depending on how your application is built, it might end up being more complicated integrating it. But
Yeah.
but the underlying concept is still simple. Hide the cursor and disable mouse activity. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do. The last thing I'll mention is we were able to generate a valid Webpack configuration. The problem is, from what I can tell, is in Webpacker land, I forget what file it was. It might have been this. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's this. No, what was it? In the development, maybe. There's somewhere there. I forget which file it is. Oh no, it's in the node modules of Webpacker. So in there, when it gets this entry property from the Webpack configuration, which is what we modified, that's the mapping here, it tries to call this toObject method on the object, which is the entry property of the Webpack configuration. But from what I can tell, it looks like they've added a toObject method to this entry point, like the original entry point. So it's modifying how like an object typically behaves because the API has been altered. So when we run our updated thing, this toObject function does not exist on an actual object in JavaScript, and we get this error when the Webpack build tries to build, and that's kind of where we are at right now. So I kind of have a pretty clear idea of what I need to do here. I think I'm going to inspect the actual entry that we get generated without making my modifications, see how it's adding this toObject or where it's coming from, and then when I generate the updated entry, I'm just going to make sure that that toObject method exists so that the rest of the Webpack build can behave properly in the context of Webpacker. And then what we should see is when we go to any of these pages where any of these entry points are referenced, we should see mouse activity deactivated on the page. That was a lot to say, but
did a good job. It was a good summary.
Yeah. So that's where we're at, and it's just a couple of things before we wrap up. Like I was mentioning, really get to know your tools. So like we're working with Webpack right now. Even if you're not the person in charge of Webpack on your project or Parcel or whatever you're using to bundle your system, as a front end, it's good to learn these things. Even if you're not the one actually doing it, because the more you understand about how a tool works, the better you can leverage or like if you run into errors, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's because of XYZ. Yeah. So that's my only other little nugget of knowledge to drop before we head off. I did want to say, I know this is our last stream with Raised Devs, so Joe, just wanted to say thanks so much for having us on for all of Hacktoberfest.
Always a pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun, and the crazy antics we get up.
Well, thank you so much for being here and spending this Hacktoberfest Help Desk with us. I know you folks are going to continue streaming after Hacktoberfest, and I guess the best place for people to find you is on your channel, which is this, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not the bottom.
Exactly.
Perfect. Yes. Awesome. And do you know the schedule yet? So, or like how often you'll be streaming?
We'll be doing it once a week, but it will be changing between what we call walkthrough Wednesdays, where we have like guests come on and talk through certain things. Like we're going to have Levi Sharp, who is a podcast producer this week,
Nice.
on Friday. It's still called
Cool.
Walkthrough Wednesday, but he could only do Friday.
Walkthrough Wednesdays and Fridays, I think, is the perfect amount of like time has no meaning nonsense for 2020.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we also do pair programming with community
Awesome.
members, and
Yep.
so we'll be switching between that.
Which I believe is the sign up for that still a thing, or am I getting confused? with
Yeah,
stuff?
there is.
Yeah.
I'll drop it in the chat here.
Awesome. Yeah, so I guess to make that make sense to people, you can sign up to pair program with Nick. If you've been watching, being like, "Hey, I want to pair program with those people," you can. There's a sign up.
I'm in the
Okay.
background just encouraging most of the time, but Nick does the pair programming.
Nice. I think every pair programming session needs a hype person into that.
Yeah.
Like, y'all can do it.
Yeah. It always makes me think of that. For those that know Rob Schneider, he's been in like a lot of Adam Sandler.
Yeah, that's
Right.
me.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you again so much. And I'll let y'all get to your other commitments. Fine.
Okay.
I gotta get coffee, Joe. I told you. I have
that is very important. I need to go get my 4th of the day.
I'm gonna go wash my hair because that's what I was doing. So.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, folks. And hope the last couple of days at Takeover are good for you, and see you in your stream after.
All right. Thanks. Joe.
Farewell.
Bye.
Alrighty, thank you to Nick and Christina, and don't go anywhere, folks. Let me run you through the schedule for the rest of the week. This is not the end of our shows today, and this is not the end of our shows for Hacktoberfest. We have a whole week for the schedules. We've got a whole week for the schedules. We've got a whole week for the schedules. A whole week for the guests. We've got 3 shows a day for the rest of the week up until Hacktoberfest finishes, and you can find all of those shows, all the information about those shows at twitch.tv RaiseDevs schedule. But let me give you a little teaser of what's to come. So first up, let me warn you, 3 shows a day. That's a lot. That's a lot to keep track of. You don't want to keep track of that nonsense. We can keep track of that for you with the marvels of technology. And the way that works, you go to Twitch, hit the love heart, subscribe to our show, and then hit the little bell, and Twitch will send you notifications when we go live. So you don't have to worry about when we're coming to you, and you don't have to keep track of that schedule. You can do it all automatically by following us here on Twitch. You can also follow us on Twitter, where we tweet an hour before every show, and that way you definitely won't miss any of the shows as we go live in this final week. So back to that schedule. Let me give you a preview of what's to come. So our next show tonight is with Marcin from Enzo. Enzo is a super cool dual representation programming language. What does that mean? It means it has both a visual editor and a textual editor. So you can write your programs in a really cool node drag and drop fashion, and then that's simultaneously and equivalently updated with a textual version as well. So it's a really cool programming language meant for working in cross-functional teams. So the visual side is meant for kind of like data people, and the text side is meant for your developers. And it's a really interesting project that has had a big transition in what technology they're using. And so we're going to be talking about not only the project, but some of the tricky open source issues with rewriting your entire code base, basically. So that's the next show today in about 4 hours and 15 minutes. 4 hours and 15 minutes is about when that happens. 9 p.m. UTC. Tomorrow morning, we have Matt Cowley, the community platform manager of DigitalOcean. If you are hanging out in the Hacktoberfest Discord, you'll recognize Matt. Matt's the person who's been maintaining the Hacktoberfest app and working really hard to keep Hacktoberfest going. He's coming to talk to us tomorrow about his other job, CDN.js. We're going to get into the CDN.js code base. Then we've got Ramon coming on. Ramon is a Rubyist, and we're going to be doing something really silly. Ramon has got he's in the chat again. Hi, Ramon. Ramon has we do this thing where we review someone's old projects and talk about what they would do differently if they did them today. And tomorrow we have a hardware project where Ramon has a Raspberry Pi dance mat controller. So I don't know if any of y'all remember the old dance mat game. My understanding is this is a version of that controller built on Raspberry Pi, and the hardware still works. So we're going to be checking that out, which is going to be super fun. That's a JavaScript project with obviously hardware. And then we have Angel Rivera from Circle CI. That's going to be a show with our founder. So John will be the host of that show, and he'll be talking to Angel, who is at Circle CI, and they'll be talking about all things continuous integration. Then Thursday, we've got Gianluca, who is on the release group for Kubernetes. We'll be talking about more than code, so ways you can contribute to projects that aren't just code, and we'll be talking about the release process for Kubernetes. Then Nathaniel from Twilio, we'll be talking to Nathaniel about one of his past JavaScript projects and his journey and developer relations and all those cool things. Sam Lanning from the UN, we'll be talking to Sam about a old lighting and music controller for doing interactive installation at festivals called Synesthesia. So again, old code review on a really cool hardware project. We're really going in on the hardware in this last week. Friday, Nicholas Carrigan, who is a regular fixture in our chat here. We met Nicholas through Hacktoberfest, and we've been hanging out all month in chat and in stream, and we're lucky enough to get Nicholas joining us on Friday. We'll be looking at a couple of Nicholas's open source projects. Eddie, who's an open source advocate and does a lot to help people get into open source. We had Eddie on at the beginning of the month talking about Hacktoberfest and what he was going to be doing this month. And now we're having him for a little bit of rest and reflection to talk about how Hacktoberfest has gone, what he's been up to, and that kind of stuff. And then our final show, we have Chris Ewald from the Raise.dev team and Matt Cowley. Chris Ewald used to maintain the Hacktoberfest app, and obviously now Matt Cowley does maintain the Hacktoberfest app. So we're going to have an old maintainer, new maintainer situation going on where they get into the Hacktoberfest app and talk about it and how it works before we end the show and the month and finish up the Hacktoberfest madness. So thank you all for watching. I hope we'll see you at the next show in about 4 hours and 15 minutes. If we don't see you then, I hope we see you sometime before the end of the month. We will be back after Hacktoberfest. We don't know what schedule yet, but we'll keep you informed as that happens. And in the meantime, if you haven't yet, you can sign up for Raise.dev completely for free at Raise.dev, or you'll be able to get put in touch with one of our coaches who will help you take the next step in your developer career, whether you're getting your first developer job or trying to get promotion or a raise, whatever it is, we are here to help, and you can find out more at Raise.dev. So as I said, thank you all very much for hanging out and for listening to Nick and Christina today. It was a great way. I think we had a great crowd, lots of questions, and a great way to wrap up their time with us. So do go check them out on their channel, The Practical Dev, and I will see you the next time you join us. Thank you so much.